Our New Testament reading is from the Gospel according to Luke, beginning at chapter 19, verse 1. This is a continuation of Jesus' journey to Jerusalem. Jesus entered Jericho and was passing through it. A man was there named Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector and was rich. He was trying to see who Jesus was, but on account of the crowd, he could not because he was short in stature. So he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore tree to see him because he was going to pass that way. When Jesus came to the place, he looked up and said to him, "Zacchaeus, hurry and come down, for I must stay at your house today." So he hurried down and was happy to welcome him. All who saw it began to grumble and said, "He has gone to be the guest of one who is a sinner." Zacchaeus stood there and said to the Lord, "Lord, half of my possessions I will give to the poor, and if I have defrauded anyone of anything, I will pay back 4 times as much." Then Jesus said to him, "Today salvation has come to this house, because he too is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek out and to save the lost." Holy wisdom, holy word. Thanks be to God. Welcome, saints of the church. Today we give thanks for and honor our membership in the household of God, a dwelling and a community that transcends time and space. Interesting, is it? On a day named for saints, we have a gospel passage about a sinner, Zacchaeus. He was a wee little man, the song and the story tell us, but his impact on the community was large. Outsized, he obtained a mountain of wealth through what was considered a shady occupation. Jesus was a chief tax collector, and tax collectors were hated because they made their living taxing their friends and neighbors and passing along part of it to the corrupt and hated Roman government. Doing this, they became rich, and they were considered traitors, traitors to their religion and traitors to their communities. But Zacchaeus, whose name is from a Hebrew word meaning clean or innocent, he's curious. Jesus has come to his town, to Jericho. Jesus' reputation has gone before him. People know about his teaching. They know about his healing. They know about the meals he shares with any number from a few to thousands. Zacchaeus wants to see him. But as I mentioned, not such a tall man, Zacchaeus. So he finds a sycamore tree and shimmies up. There are different kinds of trees called sycamores around the world. In the Middle East, it's a variety of fig tree. And the tree's canopy is large and spreads out laterally from the trunk. Its leaves are dense. You could hide in a sycamore tree if you wanted. Some Middle Eastern religions consider the fig sycamore to be the tree of life. Jesus comes through Jericho in the midst of a throng because Jesus is definitely a celebrity at this point. And though there are no paparazzi, there are still multitudes like Zacchaeus who want to get a look, who maybe even want something more, to be touched, to be fed, to be healed. And Jesus walks straight to the tree and looks up and says, "Zacchaeus, I am coming to your house today." Now, in our culture, it's not the usual thing to approach someone you're meeting for the first time and say, "Guess what? I'm coming over and I'm going to stay a while." Neither is it very common to invite strangers in our time, in our area, though there is that rare person with that rare level of open-hearted generosity combined with a certain amount of nonchalance about the risks involved. I learned at her funeral this week that my birth mother, Molly, apparently was that kind of rare person, to her family's dismay. But in Jesus' era, the rules of hospitality were different. It was expected that people would offer a very open and extensive welcome to strangers. In a place where the climate could be as hostile as robbers or armies, sometimes your life depended on your being able to present yourself at someone's tent or at someone's door and ask for shelter or protection. You were even expected to offer this kind of welcome to your enemies, because there was a very real chance you might need that protection from them someday. Scripture is filled with this kind of story. Zacchaeus, whether he was hiding or not, appears delighted, and off they go. But here's where that S word comes up, not saint, but sinner. And let's face it, Jesus is pretty much always hanging around with those considered the wrong people. Just for fun, think about the last place you'd like to be. The most sketchy crowd you can imagine hanging with. And of course, you know that's where Jesus would be, right? That's the thing about these terms, saint and sinner. There are these ideas out there that saints are people who are heroes, superstars, Olympians of the faith. And sinners are the scum, the dregs, the people you wouldn't want to be caught dead with. But Scripture tells us that we are, all of us, both saint and sinner. And saints are simply those of us who are members of God's household, and that means all of us, because God's welcome is even more extensive than the ancient Middle Eastern practice. Even traditions that venerate certain people as saints seem to notice this. I heard a story this week about a saint I had never heard of before, a Catholic saint, Saint Alphonsus. And I was wondering as I was listening to this what his heroism was going to be, his particular brand. Turns out he was a widower and a father. He became a priest when he was 40. And for the next 46 years of his life, he served as a porter, a doorkeeper at the College of Valencia in Spain. He said every time he heard a knock at the door, he imagined that it was God standing out there, and he welcomed that person as if that's who they were. That's it. That's his heroism. Seeing God in all God's children. Sainthood doesn't have to be about great heroic acts. Mother Teresa said, do small things with big love. Sainthood is about our humanity, which happens to be wrapped up with divinity because we, each of us, are made in the image and likeness of God. In the same way, sinner doesn't mean the dregs. It simply means human, which is to say, imperfect, foible-prone. But to each of us, to all of us, Jesus says, I'm coming to your house today. There's a friendly little debate among scripture scholars that was highlighted this morning in our Sunday school classes because we had the other translation about the things Zacchaeus says he will do. Half his possessions to the poor, fourfold reparations for cheating. It turns out, it's very possible, and many translations have it, that Zacchaeus isn't necessarily promising to make amends in the future. It's possible that what he's saying is, I do this. I pay back everyone fourfold if I have cheated them. I have given half my possessions to the poor. I love this ambiguous language because it's a perfect reflection of the loving gaze of God that sees us in all the ways we are at every minute. God sees us as we were, as we are, as we could be, as we will be, all at once. We are beheld in love, in all of it, through all of it. Welcome, saints and sinners of the church. Today we give thanks for and honor our full humanity as God's children, created in love. And of course, we honor in love and remembrance those who have gone before us, those who live now in God's perfect peace. I understand what this means for those of us who have the name of a beloved on that list that's in your bulletin. Or for that matter, for those of you who have ever had the name of a beloved written on your heart, maybe for years and years, because love is stronger than death. I know that this day speaks to our grief just as much as it speaks to our hope. To name our saints, as we will do in a few minutes, is to say that we live with the loss of those people we love every day, even as our faith assures us that they have now been gathered into another room in God's household. We miss them, even though we hold on to a hope that God whispered into each ear, "You are coming to my house today," and brought them to a place of joy we can only begin to imagine. To be a part of this household, to have our hearts joined with others in God's beloved community, the one we can see, the one we can't see. This means that we, even as we live in this world, live in an eternal one as well. Our hearts have gone ahead of us, confident that nothing in all creation can separate us from that love. May the blessing of the eternal triune God, Alpha and Omega, first and last, beginning and end, be with us all. Thanks be to God. Amen.